Hey guys, so today we are learning result clauses, purpose clauses, and gerundives. And at the end, I will also review other uses of the subjunctive that we've learned so far. Just to be clear, gerundives aren't subjunctives, but result clauses and purpose clauses will use subjunctive constructions. So if you go in your textbook to section 4H, the first construction that is introduced here is the result clause. So result clauses are clauses introduced by words such as tam, ad eo, seek, and ita, which all mean so, or tot, which means so many, or tantus, which means so big. So that is the first part of the introduction to the result clause, and then the result clause starts with ut. So we've seen ut used before in indirect commands, right, where we had a command verb like impero, and then ut, and then the subjunctive, and it is whatever is commanded is in that ut subjunctive clause. This ut subjunctive clause expresses result. So something is so blank that this happens. So the ut is what you translate as that. That's what it begins as in English. The result clause begins with that. So you'll have a word like so or so much in the first part of the sentence. So blank that blank happens. So he did it so badly that he had to do it again. That's a result clause, that he had to do it again. And in Latin, that will be introduced with ut, and then the verb will be in the subjunctive. Alright, so I'll just go through the examples they have here. We have Tom ferox est. He is so fierce. So the Tom is the so. That tells you that it's a result clause coming up. So if you see a word that means so or so much, you should be looking for an ut and then the subjunctive. Tam ferox est, he is so fierce, ut omnes eum timeant. That everyone, omnes, timeant, that is a present subjunctive, because timeo, temere is second conjugation, so in the present subjunctive, the we fear a liar, the e changes to an ea, timeant, that everyone fears him. Good. Omnes eum timeant. And then the second example they give, Tom pauper erat. He was so poor. Tom is so. And then ut filii dotem dare non posset. So posset there is the imperfect subjunctive. Remember, the imperfect subjunctive is formed using the infinitive. The infinitive of possum is posse, and then you add the personal ending, ms, mus, tis, unt. This is third person singular, so it's t, posset. And it's imperfect because in the sequence of tenses, if the main clause is in the past tense, you use the imperfect subjunctive, and we had erat in the main clause, which is imperfect, past tense. So in the subordinate clause, the subjunctive clause, you have to use the imperfect subjunctive. In that first example we had, the main clause, the verb was est. He was so ferocious, and then so we used the present subjunctive, timeant. So here we have, he was so poor that he was not able to give his daughter a dowry. And that's a result clause. And then the third example is from the Vulgate, John 3:16. Sic Deus dilexit mundum. God so loved the world. Ut daret, that he gave. Result clause. So the seek tells you that the ut there is doing a result. Okay. And that one also uses the imperfect subjunctive because dilexit is perfect tense, past tense. So you use the imperfect subjunctive in the subordinate clause. The note tells you that result clauses are often called consecutive clauses. from consequor, consecutus, to follow closely, because results follow closely on or are the consequences of the action in the main clause. They say to compare this to other uses with ut in the subjunctive that we've learned so far. So far we've seen ut used with accidit ut, it happened, or it happens that, and then subjunctive, or we saw ut used with indirect commands in the subjunctive. And then perficio ut, I bring it about that. You can look at those notes on your own. I'll just move on to purpose clauses. These are also called final clauses sometimes. These also use ut. The main difference is you're not going to have a word like so or so much or thus in the main clause. And the ut will be translated as so that or in order that, because it shows purpose. And then the negative, you use ne. So if it's a positive purpose clause, you use ut, and the subjunctive, if it's negative, you use ne and the subjunctive. And you translate it in order that for ut, in order that not for ne. So you use present subjunctive again in primary sequence with present tense or future verbs in the main clause. You use present subjunctive. And then in secondary sequence, that is, main clause has past tense, that's perfect, imperfect, or pluperfect. Then you use the imperfect subjunctive in the subordinate clause. Alright, so their examples here are hoc, facit, ut, benignus, sit. He is doing this in order that, or so that, he may be kind. So hoc facit, he is doing this, ut benignus sit, that he might be kind. So the sit there is the present subjunctive of sum, so that he may be kind. And then hoc fecit ne miser esset. So now we have secondary sequence. So we have fecit, perfect tense indicative in the main clause, and then esset, imperfect subjunctive in the subordinate clause, the purpose clause. Hoc fecit, he did this, ne miser esset, so that he not be unhappy, so that he might not be unhappy. Good. And then more complex ones. The next example is simulacrum tuum Jupiter optimum maxime iste Syracusis sustulit ut domi suae tenerit. Your statue, simulacrum tuum, Jupiter optimum maxime, Jupiter best and greatest, that's vocative, direct address. Iste Syracusis sustulit, that fellow took from Syracuse. That's the iste, that, it's kind of a derogatory demonstrative, remember. So that's the main clause, iste sustulit, that guy took. And then we have our purpose clause. So sustulit, remember, is perfect tense, because it's the third principal part. So that means we are in secondary sequence, so our subjunctive has to be imperfect. Ut domi suae tenerit, in order to keep it at his house, at his own house. Suae is a reflexive possessive pronoun, so his own house. Domi suae. And the domi there is locative. Good. And then they say that relative clauses with subjunctives, so remember relative clauses normally have indicative verbs If they have subjunctives, they can be used to also express purpose. So there's one way of expressing purpose with the ut or ne in the subjunctive, and then there's another way with a relative clause in the subjunctive. So the examples they have are nuntios misit qui bellum civibus nuntiarent, and so there we have our main verb is misit, which is perfect tense, so we're in secondary sequence, so the subjunctive verb is imperfect. He sent messengers who were to announce qui bellum civibus nuntiarent, who were to announce the war to the citizens. So that shows purpose. He sent them so that they do that, but the qui is just describing the nuntios. He sent the messengers who were to announce the war to the citizens. And then concilium perfecit quo effugerent. He put into practice a plan by which they might escape. So the quo there is an ablative relative pronoun by which they might escape. Again, we have secondary sequence here with a perfect tense main verb, imperfect subjunctive in the subordinate clause. Locum petit unde postum aggrediator. He is looking for a position, a locum, unde, from which, aggrediator, to attack the enemy. So this one is in primary sequence. We have a present subjunctive, aggrediator, which is a deponent verb, in fourth conjugation. So the IA, the we fear a liar. Okay, and then they have an example from your reading this week. Fures suos segestam misit. He sent his thieves to Segesta. Qui templum tuum compilarent. Who would rob your temple, or to rob your temple. So remember, those relative clauses with subjunctive can be used to show purpose. Okay, and then moving on, gerundives. Or just, they have on the next page, on page 222, a review of ut plus the subjunctive, all the uses you've seen so far. Ut, so whenever you see ut in a sentence, you're going to have to go through your mind what kind of clause it might be. So ut, and then look at the verb that comes after it. If it's indicative, the ut means how, or as, or when. If it's subjunctive, there are 4 possibilities so far. It can be an indirect command. You would know that by looking at the main verb. If the main verb is a command verb, like impero or persuadeo, then it's an indirect command. If the main clause has a word like tom, tantos, or adao, or seek, those thus or so much words, then the ut is expressing a result clause. If it's neither a command verb or a so word, then it's probably purpose. And so you translate the ut as in order that, or to blank. If the main verb is perficio or accidit, so perficio, I bring it about that, or accidit ut, it happens that, then it's one of those. The accidit ut construction, it happens that. Okay. Yeah, so those are the clues for figuring out how to translate it. Okay. Now moving on to gerundives. So gerundive, the gerundive is an adjective based on a verb. Its meaning is passive, to be blanked, and it is like the future passive participle. It declines second declension for masculine, first declension for feminine, and second declension neuter for neuter, for whatever it's agreeing with it, because it's an adjective. So if you look on page 223, they give you examples of all of the conjugations forms of the gerundive. I'm sorry, you can pause it there if you want to. But the nice thing about this is that the deponents form the same way and are translated as passive. This is the only grammatical construction where gerundives can be passive and can be translated as passive. Remember, gerundives are passive in appearance but active in meaning. This is the only case where they are passive in meaning. So I'll just read through the examples. So first, conjugation, amo, I love. The gerundive is amandus, Amanda, Amandum. So the name Amanda means she who is to be loved. And gerundives can also express necessity. So the name Amanda really means she who must be loved. All right, and then hortor, remember, is our first conjugation deponent example. So its gerundive is horandus, horanda, horandum, to be encouraged. And then habeo, to have. The gerundive is habendus, habenda, habendum, to be had. And then our deponent example, pollicendus, pollicenda, pollicendum, to be promised. Dicendus, dicenda, dicendum, to be said. Loquendus, loquenda, loquendum, also to be said. Audiendus, audienda, audiendum, to be heard. Oriendus, orienda, oriendum, to be started. Capiendus, capienda, capiendum, to be captured. Agradiendus, agradienda, agradiendum, to be attacked. So the uses of the gerundive on the next page, it can just be an adjective meaning to be blanked. The example is suspecet nos educandos, he took us to be educated. So the gerundive educandos is agreeing with nos, the direct object. So he took us, nos, to be educated. Okay, and then next example, Kaiser pontum in rare faciendum curat. Caesar saw to the making of a bridge over the Arar. The gerundive faciendum is agreeing with pontum, the bridge to be made on the Arar, in arare. And then the next use is with nouns, especially ad plus the accusative to denote purpose. Ad conduelendas sedes, for the foundations to be torn away, for the purpose of tearing away the seats, the foundations. And then another with causa or gratia, which are prepositions that take the ablative case for the sake of. So templi videndi causa, for the sake of the temple to be seen, for the sake of seeing the temple, or to see the temple, are all possible ways of translating that. Okay. Yeah. Alright, so I will assign your homework later today. It will be due Friday instead of Wednesday from now on, to kind of lighten the load a bit, and now they will be due at midnight instead of at noon. And so you have the whole day Friday to turn it in and turn in your quiz. Please let me know if you have any questions. Also, one of my favorite gerundive forms that we have in English is the word agenda, which is the gerundive of ago, agere, to do. So an agenda, that's neuter plural, things needing to be done, things to do. So, anyway, I hope y'all are doing okay. Please email me with any questions or concerns, and remember to post discussion questions once a week on Blackboard.